Hello, everyone. Your favorite comm major, Jim, is here. And I just wanted to talk to you about Anchor.fm. It is super easy to set up a podcast and get it out to all those amazing podcast platforms your friends use. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading you this ad. And I'm also a member. So honestly, it's super easy, even for the comm majors. You know, we did not do enough work in college, but it's super easy to upload your episode, get it out there to all those services. So if you want to start a podcast, go to anchor.fm/start, and you can, check it out right there. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast.
Hello and welcome to Comm Majors. I'm Brian Costello.
I'm Jim DeSanto.
And I'm a little terrified for tonight.
There we go. And tonight, we're looking at a film that gave a generation the hope that being a prostitute could lead to a life of wealth and happiness. That's right. We're talking about Pretty Woman. But first, as always, we ask the most important question of every episode. What are we drinking on our first episode of 2020?
I'm drinking my
2020.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm
Can I tell my joke that I texted you, Jim? Can I tell my 2020 joke?
No,
Yes, you can.
It took Katie 25 minutes to get it.
It really did.
Oh, so here's my joke, the number one dad joke of all
Oh
time.
my God,
What is the
you too.
official song of 2020? I can see clearly now.
I didn't get it.
I just want to note it.
I didn't
that
get it.
I blacked out for a second.
I wrote that joke by myself. Did not hear that anywhere else.
Ryan,
I
you
am
should
taking
submit that
I want
to
to
the
kill
papers.
myself. If I could
The
unhook
year
this
is
microphone
already starting on
and strangle
up
myself
note.
with the cord, I would do it. But it's
We are
very
revisiting
involved.
a film
It's a very
that
involved
posited a
microphone.
world 30 years ago
Situation.
that prostitution was a viable way to move up the social ladder.
Well,
in this
let's
country.
be fair. This was a very special brand of prostitution that never has existed
Okay.
ever.
Let's focus. Focus,
All right,
friends.
what are we
So
drinking?
I'm
Okay,
drinking
What are we drinking?
In my Widowmaker goblet,
Ooh,
I'm
Widowmaker.
having some. This is the bourbon barrel aged Troganator from Trogs.
Ooh.
It's very delicious. They say it tastes like toasted coconut and
I don't know if I got the
creme
coconut.
brulee.
Let me try again.
There's a little tartness that you need to kind of like let.
Ooh, some
kind of
creme
washed.
brulee.
There's like
I honestly think I liked the one last week better.
the jovial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one.
This one's a little bit it's a little bit brighter. It's a little bit like higher, which is not what I'm expecting from creme brulee and coconut.
Well, the Costellos are coming down to the Philly area for the summer. We might have to make a trip to Trogs
It's
and
2
do an
hours, but-
episode from.
Yeah.
Hey,
Ooh,
Yeah.
sometimes you gotta
so good.
sacrifice.
You got to
That's
do it.
good.
We got to go.
Um,
All right,
Katie, what do you got?
We have to name this beverage, James.
Right.
This is the apple cider bourbon concoction.
So this is a drink
Jim
that
makes
I make for
me
Katie.
in the colder months. And
It's
so
Why
hot,
don't you name
hot apple cider
Okay.
with a little bit of maple syrup,
Yes.
cinnamon,
Okay.
vanilla extract, and bourbon.
Okay.
It's like a witch's brew.
It's like
I
an apple
think-
pie.
It's so
Really?
good.
Yes, I think you should
So
call it
delicious.
the Apple Dumpling Gang in honor of the film, The Apple Dumpling Gang, which
You
is
do
on
love that-
Disney
You
Plus.
do love that.
I'm going to
film.
call it You Like
Plus.
Apples?
Sponsor.
Hey,
us.
you like apple?
You like
You
apples?
like apples?
How you like them apples?
We could have.
I got a
Elaine
number.
record a soundbite for it.
I got
with
a
her
number.
accent.
I like it.
I am going back to one of my favorite beers of 2019, Devil's Purse.
That means
From Dennis.
Devil's Purse is the
Vagina?
No.
We already discussed this on a previous episode. The
other
Pollock
side.
Rip IPA.
Oh, it's the thing that it's the bag you find on the beach. Is that what it is? It's the
I
little
can't-
black
I-
bags.
I forget already. We had fact checked this.
Well,
at one
that's
point,
what
and I
that picture
forget.
is, right? It's like it's the The eggs of the stingray or something?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think it is.
Probably is. I don't know.
it is.
The beer is delicious,
Fact
though.
check.
And it's
Fair
very nice people.
Fact check.
Let's just
So we're
move
going to have
on
to
from
fact check
talking
an
about-
old fact check.
Yeah.
Fact check,
Okay.
fact check.
From last week's end of the year episode. We had run long, actually not as long as I thought it was going to be,
No,
but
we did
longer
okay.
than a usual episode. So I didn't get to ask. I wanted to ask everybody if there was one movie in 2020 they were really interested in seeing. Mainly, I wanted to ask Jim because Katie, as we've established on the show, has no idea what films are ever
I was
coming
trying
out.
to think of what's coming out this year. I have no idea.
Yeah, what am I excited for that's coming out in 2020?
Oh, well, we just saw some trailers. So
Yeah.
I'm very
Okay.
excited for Just Mercy.
Oh yeah, Just Mercy, Tenant.
Tenet with the Christopher Nolan one.
I
What
wanna
is Just
see-
Mercy?
Just Mercy is the true story of Brian Stevenson, who's the founder
Oh.
of the Southern Justice. I always mess up the name. Law Center, Poverty Law
Yes.
Center.
Mhm. Is that the one with
Michael
Michael B. Jordan
Larson
and Jamie Foxx.
okay.
Katie's calling it now. Oscar nods for that
Yeah,
movie and Little Women. Those two movies, you will see those folks at the Oscars.
Well, Little Women will be up for this year's Oscars
Oh,
Yeah,
because it's in
been out.
theaters already.
true.
Yeah.
Just Mercy, when's that come out? That might be up for this year's Oscars.
I wanna say it's
too, depending
February.
on- So that would be So that
Okay.
those both could be in contention. I would agree. Tenet. Also, oh man, what was the other
I'm also
one?
excited
Oh,
about Dr.
Ghostbusters.
Doolittle. Ghostbusters.
The new Ghostbusters
Oh my
trailer.
gosh.
that looked good.
I'm
Paul
so
Rudd,
excited. Stranger Things
yeah.
meets Ghostbusters.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's a bunch of good stuff
Oh,
in
it's gonna be great.
2020
It's gonna be great.
coming out. So we're excited about that. All
Yeah.
right, now it
Here we
is
go.
time for the rundown.
The rundown.
We should have done the 2020 tonight.
I'm Barbara Walters, and this is
Stop
2020.
Stop it.
Once upon a time, in a fourth-story walk-up in LA, a high school dropout from the South started selling her beautiful body in order to pay the rent. A woman of strong work ethic and romantic ideals, Vivian would not work for a pimp or kiss any suitor on the mouth. Her life further complicated, however, when her mentor roommate Kit began stealing her earnings to score more drugs instead of to pay the rent. Along comes her prince, kind of. Edward has a car he needs help driving in a destination he can't find. This gorgeous damsel drives his car and his penis right on home. Edward, the businessman, makes our damsel a deal. $3,000 to be his arm and bed candy for 1 week. Vivian loves her week in the penthouse, except when she's reminded of how the rich see her, an uneducated sex worker who has found herself on the wrong side of town. Ultimately, our fair lady makes Edward a little more charming, and Edward makes Vivian more palatable for general consumption. He rescues her from her life, and she joyfully rescues him right back, completing Vivian's princess fantasy and allowing 90s women to feel okay about liking this movie.
The end.
The
The
end.
end.
They lived happily ever after until the prenup.
And the local crazy, maybe homeless guy is just screaming about having a
Just
dream.
having a dream. Sometimes you got a dream. You come to Hollywood, you got a dream.
Everybody's got
Everybody's
a dream.
got
I think
a
that guy was
dream.
real and he was just doing that.
No,
He was
there,
like,
there-
"This is
there was
crazy
that.
shit."
There's a
And-
fun fact about that.
And Gary Marshall was just like, let it go. Let it
There's
go.
a fun
Let's
fact about that.
roll with it. As
Penny
Aileen
will
said,
love
I
this.
asked her for her thought of this film. She goes, "Of course they didn't end up together, and there's no way that he ever actually thought she was a smart person."
Well,
That was her analysis.
let's
of this
be fair.
film.
Right out of the gate, this movie makes me think that she is basically Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah. Well,
There-
she gets more and worse, more and less Forrest.
She does some of the stupidest things we've seen a character do.
Which is tough on this show because we've seen characters do some pretty dumb shit on
Yeah.
this show.
What's the really stupid?
Well, first of all, she keeps $300 balled up like in a bunch of ones.
Oh,
It's
that
like
was so.
a
That's such a
softball.
weird little.
Around
visual-
a known drug addict.
Yeah.
No, but there's so like when he gives her the money for the dress, and it's these like he pulls out these crisp hundreds
Yes.
or 20s or whatever. I thought they were 20s, But then suddenly when she comes back to Hector Elizondo, they
It's
are
a ball.
crumbled up
Yeah.
ones, like what my kid pulls out of her piggy bank.
Yeah.
Like, I have
All right.
300 of these. What do we do with them?
She does a lot
want
of
to
stupid
give
stuff.
just some slight structure to this because I think
Yeah.
that this
Because we could go
all
all
over
over.
the place.
Yeah.
And this is a film that I think we almost have to talk about in somewhat chronological order because
Okay,
the
fair.
craziness only gets ratcheted up
Yeah.
as we move along.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
I was going to sing there. It
Mm.
sound the music.
So, okay, somebody else start because Katie has so much to say.
I am just curious, having watched this film. First of all, in our Jim and I's group chat that we have with the guys from Pop Addled, I made the comment, this is not a film I should have been watching at the age I was watching it at, which,
No.
I mean, is something we've commonly talked about on the show.
Mhm.
This might be the absolute one that I should not have
No.
been watching. This is worse than profanity,
Yes.
worse than violence. I don't really let me start out with this because Katie we're very lucky because most podcasts
Don't
not
have women.
females on
Yep.
it. I feel like they are positing a world where this is a female's dream of romance in
Yep.
some way. And I'm wondering, as a male, am I somehow missing how this would be a woman's ideal of a romantic
Mhm.
dream?
No, I think you're just too smart. I don't know. So so this is like it's the feminine version of the American dream, I guess, that like we can all get to wherever we want to be in life if you find the right man. Right?
Amazon build this, and I put this in our notes for the show. I was looking at when I ordered this on Amazon. I was intrigued, actually. This is the 30th year of this film's release. So I actually think, don't be surprised. We might be ahead of the curve a little bit here. Don't be surprised in the next year that you don't see more articles on this. I'm sure we'll get some kind of theatrical re-release and, 4K release and all this type of stuff. I was surprised at how this film was being billed. All right. This is how Amazon builds this film as a classic rags to riches story.
Yeah.
In what ways
So
is she doing something to make herself rich?
right. So here's to me her being a prostitute changes everything about this film. If she was a waitress and the deal was just about like, I need somebody to come to these business dinners
Oh,
with
they needed
me.
somebody to come in this film. That was very clear.
Right. But so to me, like it changes things greatly. So here's the background that we need to know about this movie that I think it's really important because I felt from the very beginning that there was a problem with tone where you're getting some of the real
Grit. of
yeah, absolutely,
prostitution.
of being a sex worker, right? Like there is a woman dead in the alley. And it's
And
apparently
Hank Azaria
somebody that
is
Julia
investigating it.
Robert, and I mean that's like a whole scene, right?
Hank
Where like
Azaria, yeah, like he's in a lot of the movies we do for some reason.
this was
I
his
know,
first
this was his- yeah,
first
it
talking
was.
role.
And he's not in it
any
ever
film.
again.
No, but
No.
but that's the choice made, right? Of that's the first scene.
Yeah.
So it's not like she's just walking down. It's not so much
it's not
just
the first
setting,
scene, but it's there.
but it's
It's pre-meeting
this is
Richard
like
Gere.
exposition, right? Of like you're learning her world. And so she's living in a world where women in her profession are being killed, right? Like there's violence.
Yes.
There's violence involved with what she's
Real
doing.
violence.
Totally. We find out that her roommate has a drug problem,
Well, yeah, okay,
right?
yeah.
Hold on. And is stealing her rent money, so she can't pay the rent. So there's this darkness at the beginning of this movie. In the middle of it, before we ever see Julia Roberts' face, we get an ass shot.
Mm.
And this is where, Gary Marshall. So like, are we supposed to sympathize with the situation she's in, or are we supposed to objectify her and say like, damn, Julia Roberts' body double has a nice ass?
Yes.
Also, I'm sorry you're living this life.
I would just like to point out that the shots of women's bodies in this film, to me, is more unnecessary than Stanley Kubrick and Eyes Wide Shut.
I agree, because I think it put.
But so we argued about this.
It put Eyes Wide Shut in a little bit more focus for me. A little bit more understanding of what Kubrick's trying to do, but whether you like that or not is a different story.
I can understand the vantage point of saying that there is a purpose for it in Eyes Wide Shut,
right?
More than I can in Pretty Women.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not justifying
in Pretty Women,
you have to change
Pretty
your
Woman,
mindset of it.
I keep saying Pretty Women. It feels just like
I wish we had watched Little Women.
Can we talk about that beginning though? Because the beginning, when you're introduced to the seedy underside of LA prostitution scene where a woman is murdered, everything's lit like you're in fucking IKEA. Their apartment is nicer than pretty much anywhere I lived prior to owning a home.
Well, you're pointing out one of the problems here, right?
The drug addicts are not drug addicts; they're just people.
So we get these little hints of like that this is like a dangerous, bad situation.
They want to tell you that,
but then it just just tickles it, and then everything's okay, right? We're never going to come back to Kit's drug problem again. We're never going to
tell them why. What was it originally? What was the film originally?
Originally, this movie was supposed to be really dark. And it was supposed to kind of expose the dangers of being a sex worker in the 90s. And for some reason, Disney bought it. And Disney was like, no, we're going to do this as a rom-com. The end of the movie was supposed to be
best. This is the best.
Edward and Vivian do not end up together.
Yeah.
Instead, Vivian and Kit head off on a bus to Disneyland with the money that they got from Edward, from being with Edward for the week. And there's kind of like a lack of resolution where like the final shot's supposed to be Vivian kind of like staring off, not very happy into the sunset sort of thing.
They wanted to do the end of the Graduate where you're not sure what's
pretty
going.
much.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be, it was supposed to be a really dark film.
Vivian was a drug addict as well.
Oh,
and
right.
At the end, originally,
yes,
Edward physically kicks her out of the car and throws the $3,000 on her and drives away.
Yeah, so she was supposed to be the one with the drug problem.
That sounds like a good movie,
right? So I think that explains a lot of the problems with this movie. Where that's a totally different film. But they kept some of those parts and then tried to make it into a romantic comedy.
Yeah, it's terrible. Let's just, before we go too much further, why don't we each just give like a minute of our thoughts on the film overall?
Okay.
All right, you go first.
Katie's talked a lot. You guys,
and I think we'll all probably be very close on this. Julia Roberts is not the only good thing about this movie, but she's the only reason this film is even worth watching. No one else. Richard Gere is a wet napkin. He's awful in this. He doesn't do anything. His character is boring as hell. He literally is not even borderline not a character until the end of the third act. Everyone there are good performances, like Hector Elizondo is awesome, but like he's not anything. There's not one scene in this movie that I'm like, that was a great scene when I hear about people quoting this, I'm like, what is quotable in this movie? Like, what is memorable about this other than
he's not really my uncle. They never are. Honey.
Yeah. Like the funniest parts of this movie.
They never are.
They never really
are.
The
only funny parts of this movie are the parts where it becomes so campy that it's self-aware. Like when she's pissing off the people in the hotel, I think is probably the funniest parts of this movie.
Huge mistake. Huge.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go shop now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just not, to me, this isn't This is a movie that I'll never need to watch again.
Brian?
This is like one of those films I felt like I watched for this. Like, I'm not sure I would have ever rewatched it again had we not watched it. I should add that I was not like angry that this film was picked. I was just kind of like, oh, yeah, Pretty Woman.
Agreed.
I saw it. I mean, probably almost 30 years ago, and I remember bits and pieces of it. I think my biggest issue is I don't think there was much here at all in this film. I kind of agree with Jim. The scenes were just kind of scenes. I don't feel like there was a great plot in it. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I think The Notebook is a much better movie than this. Like, I would rewatch The Notebook numerous times with all the faults we have with The Notebook, because I'm not really sure what this movie is. I didn't laugh at all with this movie. Like, I don't think it's funny at all.
I agree with you. You take the acting from and the direction from this movie and give that to the story of The Notebook with some editing to the story of The Notebook by Gary Marshall, and I think that is a much better film than either of these two.
Yeah, I don't know. Aileen put it best. She was just like, it's entertainment.
It's not.
That's just, but in the sense that it's like, I kind of get it. I could see you sitting there and being like, okay, Pretty Woman's on, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I don't have this visceral hate to it like some of the movies we watch. In the same respect, I don't necessarily know what people love about it.
So
that's where I'm curious.
I felt watching this yesterday like, oh, this could be my Notebook, because I feel like you fall under the trance of Julia Roberts, right? Where like she is so good on screen that like I totally found myself with like the goofy smile at like certain parts of the movie where it was just like, oh, I don't want to love this, but like she's great. Like I love her. I love these little interplays with Hector Elizondo and the Elevator Man. I like it.
Should have had more of those, I think.
I loved it.
If I have a real complaint, I think there should have been more of that when they were editing the film.
No,
they should have realized this is working. This part is working.
I feel like if I wasn't watching it for the podcast, I probably would not have seen the movie again. And it would have gone down as one of those movies I like fondly remembered from my younger years. Because it like made me feel good. And then when I rewatched it with my brain, it made my brain hurt a lot.
To me, this is a movie that, like The Notebook, I think a lot of people have rose-colored glasses when they think about the first time they saw it. And they haven't, some folks probably haven't rewatched this in a long time. And if you were to give a list of Julia Roberts movies, this would probably fall in the upper 5%.
This is her IMDb movie. This is number one.
And this
Pretty Woman, Julia Roberts.
And I could probably go through a list, but right off the top of my head, I think of something like Notting Hill, another romantic comedy, sort of the reverse of this story.
Significantly bad. I mean,
it's not even close. It's not even close. If you were given those two movies as like, you had never seen any other movies, you'd probably love them both. But like Notting Hill is Oscar worthy compared to this movie. It's so bad. This movie,
and there's writing.
This movie is just boring to a certain extent. If Julia Roberts isn't in this movie, there's nothing worth watching at all.
But she makes it worth watching, though. Right, like there's so like
I'm not saying
it
I don't
it's
think
entertainment.
This is unwatchable.
It's not.
I don't think it's that.
But it's a waste of time though. It's not unwatchable to the point where I'm like, this is so bad, I need to turn it off. But it's like, I'd rather be doing laundry. It's just not to me. It's not entertaining.
Well, so I do think, as we discussed about John Wick not targeting me as their audience. I don't think though. This is where it gets weird. This is weird, right?
Who does it target?
Who is the target? Right. So I would say that it's supposed to be targeting women, right? But then why the gratuitous body shots of Julia Roberts?
You know,
is that so that you get men to come see the movies, even though they're not Julia Roberts' body?
But men are going to
even
see
the cover
that. The
image,
only
not
way,
Julia Roberts' body. Body double.
I feel like the only way men were seeing this movie was on dates.
Right.
So at that point, they're there anyway.
So is it just to keep them interested? To like
I don't
show
know. This movie made some
weird.
I thought this movie made some really interesting choices. And I don't know if I should feel like proud that they made the choices or feel like, why would you make that choice?
So
for example,
yes.
just for example here, that this is an R-rated movie. I don't know. You're selling me the fairy tale aspect, right? The white knight's going to ride up to me. If that's the case, to me, and I could be wrong here, the fact that they're banging on the hotel piano and he's paying her for sex, I don't know. It's a really interesting choice if he's paying her for sex and it's a dark film that ends the original way for the script. Him paying her for sex and them ending up together is a weird choice to me.
I agree. That's where I felt like there were
me.
two different movies happening here. And in the movie I want to feel good about, she's not a prostitute, right? And
Well, she's not that's the other thing about this movie. She's not really a prostitute in this movie.
Well,
right? Like
she
tonally, there is nothing about this movie. We don't see her be a prostitute other than with him.
okay. But
No, but like it's not set up. What I mean is like
They didn't do much to earn it other than a few throwaway lines.
Right. And so like
is that
if
what you kind of mean? Like
I kind of mean that. And I
agree with
also
that.
mean like Brian watching this as an 11-year-old, there's no context in this movie for him to say like, I understand why it's it's a fairy tale of like someone doing a job that's like frowned upon and
Horrible.
awful to being married to him. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's something wrong with the tone in the beginning of this movie, like you said.
I
Brad.
agree.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with what you're saying, actually. I don't know what you're trying to say.
Like, there's no, like, this movie struggles from, like, telling us things instead of showing us things.
Okay.
And so, like, there's no, it doesn't jive. Like, in the beginning of that movie, the only, like, I don't know how to articulate this.
Can I pick this up? Can I pick this point up? I think it would be tonally very difficult, and this is why I think they didn't show it. If you start the film, let's say, with a montage of her in bed with different men, or something along those
absolutely.
lines,
like Wedding
it's then
Crashers.
very difficult to play her as this innocent person. Oh, it's not drugs, it's dental floss. Oh, look at me, I'm in a bubble bath, as if it were like the fountain of youth. You couldn't play it that way, which is why I found it very interesting. And having not seen this for a long time, there were a few things in my mind. I couldn't remember if they did sleep together.
Yes.
While he was paying.
Yes.
Her.
And
In my mind, it was like they
I agree,
don't.
Bri.
And that would have made more sense because then it's not really prostitution.
Yep.
But oh no, she is blowing him while they watch an episode of I Love Lucy. For money.
Totally agree. And that was a point where it lost me because I had the same thought of like, I don't remember whether they actually. And then the I Love Lucy scene happens and you hate him. I feel like there's no coming back from that. Like I don't want her to be with him. I don't like it feels their relationship. They have chemistry on screen, absolutely. But their relationship feels unearned in terms of like he's a shitty human.
After thinking about it today, do you think they have chemistry?
I do.
I don't. I just think that she is a giant fucking movie star from like the get-go. And she is the only thing with chemistry in this film.
Oh, you see,
that's interesting.
Because he doesn't do
Richard
anything.
Gere was as bad as you.
There's actually
not bad, but he doesn't do anything in this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's purposeful. But I don't think I don't think it's like an Andy McDowell in Four Weddings.
No, it's not
I think he's doing exactly what he was told to do in this film.
But it's not chemistry. That's not a chemistry. That's
I
not a
think they have
relationship.
chemistry.
It is weird. I would
think they
agree
have
with
chemistry.
that. This idea
Yeah.
that they
Yes,
had
I
to do
do.
Runaway Bride and they had to find all these other movies to put, where they should be in the movie together because the chemistry was electric. I don't think it was great, but I also didn't mind him in this movie.
No.
I didn't.
I
And
thought
I
he
have
was
to be
fine.
honest, there's only a few Richard Gere movies I think of, and I don't mind Richard Gere. I am a fan of a film that I think is much more sappy and much better than this, a little film called An Officer and a Gentleman with one Mr. Louis
Never seen
Gossett
that.
Jr.
My
Love
college
it.
roommate loved watching that on VHS.
Love it.
I don't know if I've ever actually watched.
Or Richard Gere is amazing in Primal Fear.
This
with
got
Edward
you all
Norton.
fired up about Richard Gere. You're real
No.
fired up about him.
What do you mean?
I think
no.
I could see Jim not liking. Upon rewatching this, I was thinking of how much Jim's not going to like this movie.
Yeah.
But mainly and I found myself thinking, like, Jim, where are the character arcs?
Yeah.
Where, other than Julia Roberts, this is almost like a film which I think would have been really interesting if you only saw it from her point of view. Like the throwaway scenes where it's Richard Gere in the boardroom and stuff. This is like bad TV shit that you could see in a bad, like TNT drama. Those awful TNT dramas that they used to produce for a while. It's just like the acting and the actors are like Jason Alexander's a good actor. Richard, they're good actors, but there's nothing there. The storyline about him being a corporate raider and he's going to take over this thing and now he wants to build, all that is bullshit that I do not care about.
So
and
that's
it's simply a
interesting.
device to make you care to see that somehow, Julia Roberts has changed
his
Richard
dad.
Gere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets
it's
the
just
father
weak.
moment. Like,
Okay, so that didn't bother me as much as
doesn't
it
bother me.
bothers you.
It doesn't bother me.
I
But
just
I-
think it's weak. I
I
don't think
guess
it's
so,
necessary.
but I do think it's necessary. It might not have been the best way to do it, but it does feel like at least there is some effort paid to developing him in some kind of a way, right? To showing that he
They
changes.
do try.
They
It's fair.
do,
They do
and
try
so
to do it.
because otherwise it would be worse. Like if you think about it without that, you have to feel that she impacts him in some kind of a way. Because when we look at the two sides here of what's supposed to happen, right? The idea is that he goes from being this cold, heartless person who finds no joy in life, really,
Yes.
and just wants the best things to be able to say he has the best things, to being somebody that like walks barefoot through the grass and eats
Is that why
cheese
women
steaks.
like this movie, Katie?
I,
It's because it fills to
I
the
don't know.
fantasy that
I don't know.
women can change men.
well,
is that
this
the
this
attractive
is an
thing of
interesting
this
question.
film?
Hold on, let's get there. So then, but then the other side of it, to me, the problem isn't really Richard Gere, because then what we're saying about what happens with Julia Roberts is that if you throw enough money at something, right, that like money is what changes her. It's not him that changes her. It's
Right.
not. It's not going to the opera that changes her. It's that all of a sudden she can feel more powerful, right? Like she can be the person who, can go to the fancy places and can wield
fit
the
right
credit
in.
Exactly. That's what gives. So it's that confidence
Yeah.
that makes her feel like, oh, I don't need to do these things. I actually got good grades in school, and why am I doing this? Like I can go achieve. But the thing that did that was money.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, that's the problem.
It's gross.
It's not his love for her. It's the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel that they shortchanged. And again, I get it. This is whatever it is a movie. This idea, they're very cavalier in the idea of what it would mean to be a prostitute and to make that choice is weird to me. And to them be able to say at the end of the movie, I'm going to San Francisco, I'm going to do this, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to take $3,000 and that's somehow enough to change my life.
Oh, she gives that away, by the way.
Yeah. But I just don't
No,
feel
you're
like
right.
you make that choice to go into that profession in that way, and then and again, I get it. It's
Again,
oddly
they
like a
said it.
weird fairy tale there.
They
but
told and
it's-
didn't show. She basically says, I didn't have a choice. I kind of like fell into it, and it just, no one decides to do it. They just kind of end up there. but
Yeah,
it's just
was
a
her life
conversation.
that run down
No,
to do that, though?
no, their apartment looked like the fucking staging thing from IKEA.
But I think that's the problem of that there were two
Visions.
There were two visions here, and you see both
in order
of them.
to make this for
Right.
Touchstone, which was a Disney
and
company,
so-
they needed this to be.
Right. And so the fact that, there's like a comedic moment of the pimp, the new roommate is saying like, no, the pimp burned all my furniture when he kicked me out. Right.
That's
Right.
so
Like that's
funny.
supposed to be a funny moment where Kit, who is supposed to be a drug addict, is like, no, really,
Well-
I'm going to go into beauty school. For me as the viewer, I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. So like, are we supposed to believe? Right. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Again, it's like to me, this time period is super interesting, right? So it's 90, right? 1990?
Yeah, absolutely. 90. So shot
It's
at the end of the Reagan
Yeah, so
era.
this is the end of excess. Like when you think of like all the forms of art around this time and entertainment, excess like reigns supreme, right? This is the era of like Van Halen and tights and hair metal
everything.
and
Reaganomics and Alex P. Keaton and
even just 5 years later, this movie would be seen as disgusting.
Well, I thought it was interesting in the sense, and I don't think it. I think it was very heavy-handed with it, and it was interesting having just seen Rian Johnson's Knives Out, which is brilliant. We'll have to do it at some point for the show this year because it was so good. So much of that movie buried within that is a social commentary of the wealthy of our time period now. I knocked my mic over. I was so excited about Knives Out.
That's good.
But a social commentary about how rich treat people, the wealth acquisition and all that. And he does it in a brilliant way within the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's very heavy-handed in this film.
Well, and
in the way that they deal with that. And I feel that's Gary Marshall, who was very outspoken against, Reaganomics and conservatism of that time period, trying to say, you could side with Julia Roberts. She's that every person against the elitist rich. When you're sitting there and be like, she is a legit prostitute. Okay. Yeah. People have the right to roll their eyes at her. If she was a waitress or like a school teacher or, something like that, this story to me, it becomes a little bit more understandable.
I agree.
And I think you could attach more to it.
But so here, to me, the Gary Marshall making it makes it even more cringeworthy because the stories behind the film, in terms of like the actors and actresses that they were looking at to portray these characters.
Oh, there's some great casting in this potentially.
So they were looking at like Al Pacino to be the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You're a prostitute.
Okay, so we were discussing how old is Richard Gere supposed to be? So when I saw the list of the men that they were approaching to be the Richard Gere character, it became very clear to me that he is supposed to be in his 40s or
50s.
40s or 50s.
Yes, he was.
There's no way that he's supposed to be a young man.
No, he was playing older than he was because he was only, I think,
40.
just 40, just 40 at the time.
And then the women that they were casting were all in their young 20s. Some of them they said no to because they looked too young and they didn't want them to look like teenagers. But clearly they were trying to portray a young, so Julia Roberts was 21 when she auditioned for this film. Several of the female actresses who tried out for this role, so she was not the first choice. They offered this role to several women who turned it down because after they read the script, they did not agree with the portrayal of women in the film. Yeah. And to me, that just speaks volumes for if in the 90s, your leads were saying like, no, don't do this. And then you have Gary Marshall, stories of him like massaging her on set, like during the sex scene, she was super stressed out. And so there's a story of him like massaging her forehead vein in the sex scene. I'm like, it makes it so much creepier. She's hot. A 21-year-old
so weird.
Like actress, and here's the 70-year-old director massaging her while she's naked.
Can I say something about the sex scenes which are weird to me? This is like more as time goes on, my opinions change to this. I feel like this has got one of those weird in-betweens. I just feel like you either should have nudity and say, this is the vision we have for this movie, or just allude to things. Like there is a very odd in between in this movie.
Agreed.
That I'm not quite sure why it's there. Do you know
totally
what I mean?
agree.
Like again, borderline simulating oral sex, referencing it.
Yep.
That's pretty intense in a movie. Throwing up, let's have sex on the piano. And Aileen and I started talking about this idea of, this is where I thought the excess of being rich is a little heavy handed. I'm the richest person here, so I'm just going to have sex in the hotel ballroom on the piano and tell everybody else to leave. That's a little bit heavy handed there. And it was weird. Like most of the shots were of Julia Roberts' body double, which, by the way, I think probably the most iconic thing about this film is the poster. The Richard Gere, Julia Roberts, that's not even her.
Yeah.
Yep.
She wasn't there for that. They just photoshopped her face onto it. That was a weird dynamic. I also find it really weird, and this is me as a history teacher, and this bothered me a lot. This does something I can't stand, which is perpetuates myths. And it perpetuates an idea that people who have been placed into an economic disadvantage societally can overcome it, through these magical fairy tale type ways. Yeah. And it's the same thing when I teach kids about Andrew Carnegie. They're like, Andrew Carnegie, he showed up from Scotland and he lived in the slums and he became the richest person. That's one fucking guy. All the other immigrants were living in slums and dying in slums of tuberculosis at 30 years old. A prostitute does not meet apparently the richest person maybe in the world. And he does not say, I can have any woman I want, but I want a prostitute. And if you're a prostitute, go prostitute yourself, go find the richest person you can have, and your life will be saved. And that's what this film does.
I think it ultimately does a disservice to... It makes light of, a life's a choice, not a choice, a reality that it is not one that you can kind of turn into a fairy tale, right? Like there are no fairy tale endings for sex workers. Like that is not a thing.
It would be a first. Maybe there is one.
I just feel like it does such a disservice to kind of like tease with the like women are being killed, women have drug problems, pimps are being violent and taking all of their money, and their like it toys with all of that, and then is like, and then there will be a wonderful ending, and a man will save you.
I would like to say the one thing that is believable is that a Wharton educated man, let's say who was a billionaire or maybe called himself a billionaire, might have sex with a sex worker.
Oh, totally.
Totally.
Well, yeah,
there might be somebody we know today
I just have
in
to
a
be
very
honest.
high office who has done that before.
If Disney wanted to do this movie, so this was the retelling of My Fair Lady, right? Like this was supposed to be the 1990s retelling of My Fair Lady.
Do you think it was just supposed to be edgy and they thought that this is, we're kind of being edgy, we're going to have it as a prostitute?
The issue with like the original material, right? Where it was this movie called 3000 that was this dark story about a man buying a woman for a week, right? Like that should have been a different film. Right. And then take the rom-com that you want to make with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, and that she is not a prostitute, right?
She's
like
a waitress.
Make
That's
that
what you said.
different.
She should be a waitress.
I mean, again,
an out of work actress. Somebody went to Hollywood and now she is, working as a waitress because she can't make ends meet as an actress.
And don't have her blow him on the first night.
Well, and again, this is like the end of the 80s. This is hopefully no one will look back on this film as like something that documented anything close to reality in the 80s, because I think
people have AIDS. This is when AIDS is blowing up as an issue, and we're turning prostitution into a preferred dating method.
This is an all-time low for truth and authenticity in artwork, right? In music, in movies. Like we are 4 years away from getting Pulp Fiction, right? And that's fake, obviously, but it's like there's a grittiness and a reality to how certain characters are treated in that movie that is not represented here. I don't know.
I think so for me, the test of like, do we feel okay about this is like, can we reverse the genders on this, right? Can we do this with a powerful woman and then a male prostitute and nope, feels creepy.
I don't know.
All of a sudden we feel a little creepy about it. I
have been more okay with that.
Well, when we're gonna talk about this later about if like a modern day take on this. But no, Bri, I think if it was the same storyline, because I said to Jim, so when we throw this on the flip, right?
Loverboy.
You end up with the female idea of the cougar.
We should have watched Loverboy instead, actually.
But it's not. It's because what happens when we as a society portray an older woman in power with a younger male who's attractive, we condemn the woman, right? We call her a cougar. We say she's robbing the cradle. But as a society, we're still okay with this notion of powerful men having women who are 20, 30, 40 years younger than them as arm candy. Like that is ingrained in our society.
Well, it
is our president.
Can I say this? Do you think that's as acceptable today for regular people?
No, it's better than it was.
No, I'd say there is definitely more.
It still happens, certainly. Sure. But do you think the perception of that is in a way changing?
Absolutely. I think that is changing.
I still, like, to me, I was sitting watching this, and her performance is, Jim's right, makes it watchable. You know, I think I love sometimes watching movies like this, young Julia Roberts, young Tom Hanks, like in Big, before they were Tom Hanks or Julia Roberts, or I think of, my favorite Tom Cruise in like Top Gun or something, before he was Tom Cruise. And you just get to watch them as actors in roles. And there is something exciting about that, and in this film, like, I did enjoy her because she's someone to me who I don't want to say I've soured towards, but I've become maybe less interested in her as she became Julia Roberts, not the actress who is Julia Roberts. And this kind of reminded me of, man, when she was doing stuff, she was really good. Mm-hmm. And
absolutely.
She makes this, and I don't blame her. Like, I think the material is what the material is, but she jumps off the screen.
Absolutely.
She's
beautiful,
I agree. But she's also fantastic.
I think without her in this film, this film is a dud.
There's
absolutely.
No film.
No, there's no way. I think the people who were cast in these roles is what made the film work.
Yeah.
I think it was the emotional reaction that people had to the two of them on screen. I think so. It was like Michelle Pfeiffer and Al Pacino in this movie.
Wow.
No, that immediately people
Keaton
go, what
Laird
the
hates
fuck?
Al Pacino, so he would not want that.
They were both offered these roles. And so a lot of it, I think, just came down to luck.
Did you ever see that movie?
No.
Awful.
Somebody there was another actress started on this film.
Molly Ringwald was supposed to be this. They were begging Molly Ringwald to be this character, and she's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. So it's just to me, like, so much of how this went down was just luck and the fact that it ended up being Julia Roberts, and that is why people love it.
Yeah, and I'm driven back to this again, and I'm genuinely intrigued by this question. And if you're somebody listening who likes this movie, what draws you to it? Is this a film that you are constantly revisiting, or is it falling into this category of films that we've started to do recently? I know Katie loved Independence Day, but Jim and I did not, in which we watched these films that we had connections to.
No, and I can absolutely
and questioning.
I can absolutely see Independence Day in the same kind of a way, where like I have an irrational emotional connection to that movie. And again, and I could kind of feel it while watching Pretty Woman. Like I could feel that happening of like, oh my gosh, if I wasn't thinking so hard about this movie, I would just like turn my brain off and enjoy it. Enjoy watching Julia Roberts on screen enjoy him coming down in the all of a sudden white limo
But
that
I
was
think
gray for the rest of the
maybe
movie.
you could, if you could do that.
It's not the
But
same limo. We talked about that last night.
it is.
I thought it was the same limo.
But I think I'm also drawn to this fact, the point that you brought up a while ago that I'm constantly drawn back to now and thinking about, which is it's the experience of when you first saw this movie that so much impacts your take on it. Certainly my viewpoint on Chances Are, which we know Jim hates, but I have like a fond memory of that film.
Love Chances Are.
Going to see, I picked Bad Moms, and Tim from Pop Addled has been on me about picking that as my favorite, but that's because I had a really fun experience going to see that movie. So there's more than the film itself.
Yep.
Right.
So I will say this as we come to a close, and we could talk one more point about, maybe we can each add one more thing about this. This film did make me like The Notebook more. I've said this before because I could understand.
Yep.
This helped put The Notebook in more perspective for me. I could understand emotionally people maybe having some connection to The Notebook. A family member, a loved one died or something like that. And the acting is all those issues. This one I'm torn on. I don't understand where the emotional attachment to this film comes unless it's tied to something else in your life.
No, I think you're right.
Nothing emotional.
So if we think about this is 1990, right? And I would love to be able to figure out how old most of us were when we saw this. So I was 10 when this movie was made. I definitely did not.
I must have seen it on
video.
I
did not see this when I was 10. But I would say, like, most of the folks who are responding are women in our age range, right? So I would imagine that we probably watched this with a group of friends as teenagers. And so totally not thinking through, what's this saying about women? What is the message that we're receiving, right? We're buying into the romance of like, what if a silver fox of a billionaire, wooed you and offered you this other life?
Yeah,
and
while
I think
you were a prostitute.
No, but see, I think I think in the like female mind watching this movie, I think you just skim right over that detail, right to the like connecting with the protagonist thing and just buying into the relationship, right? Buying into the love affair and the fairy tale ending. That's the only way that I can think that it happens.
And by the way, this is an aside for another episode that we can discuss this. This continues to mount this thing over the last 5 or 6 years that I've been watching TV and movies that I have issues with. And it's tied into reality shows and perceptions of younger people of the idea of what love is. And this is maybe a whole other discussion that you're going to love this person. Like, oh, this is love. You love. That's bullshit.
Well, and what's interesting,
I'm sorry, it's just absolute bullshit.
She kind of calls that out, right? Like, so the scene after Jason Alexander sexually assaults her in the penthouse, she says to Edward, there is always going to be a friend of yours who thinks that they can own me, that they can have me, that they can, right? That power dynamic is always going to be there. And she's right. and then they just kind of like barrel past that,
because love can overcome that.
No,
you don't understand.
She's absolutely right. She's never going to be able to move past that identity.
Can I ask a question? There's a point in this film where he offers her, I'm going to fly you to New York. I'm going to give you an apartment. I'm going to give you an allowance. We're going to do all this stuff. And she's like, fuck no, you're making me feel like a whore. And that's what she says. What has changed at the end of the film?
I agree.
No,
Is
nothing.
That's the
thing.
I agree.
That he's giving her, basically,
and nothing has changed in him either between that scene and when it's like this is a classic like romantic comedy movie trope that just needs to get thrown out, which is in the last quarter of the movie they break up, and for no reason at all other than thinking about it for 10 minutes later, they get back together.
Yep. The only thing that's changed is his approach. Right? That he makes the dramatic entrance. That is the only thing that changed.
We don't learn anything about what he's really is. Are they getting married? No. Are they now?
He's just not going to tell her that he has a separate apartment for her.
Yeah, I don't understand this.
She can stay in his place. I don't know. Is the ex-girlfriend gone?
I believe this should be considered a romantic comedy.
No,
there is no comedy
the
in
other,
this film.
I never finished my second point of when we're reevaluating
it's also not
this.
romantic.
For the women who love this movie, I want to ask, like, do you want to watch this movie with your daughters? Because I don't want to watch this movie with my daughters, not even when they're teenagers. I don't want to watch this movie with my daughters.
You don't think this is a not without my daughter film? I will not watch this without my daughter.
But I think that that's an important question to ask, right? Because to me, unless you can say at some point, like, yeah, I would totally want to sit down and watch this with them, then you're realizing on some level, like, there's something messed up here. Right.
And I want to highlight, and we've had this discussion before, because there have been films recently. I feel like sometimes we go back with these films and we put a modern viewpoint on them. And I think at sometimes that's fair. Maybe sometimes it's not. But again, it highlights this idea of what is a timeless film.
Yes.
This is not a timeless film.
No.
In my opinion.
No.
This is not, at the time, maybe it was more reflective of what people would have found acceptable.
In fact, in doing that, Brian, in showing what we found acceptable and not just acceptable, but hugely entertaining. This movie was gigantic, right? Like, it was big at the time.
It made a lot of money.
Yeah. It shows us exactly what was wrong with that time period and how we've grown. We don't accept comedies like this anymore. We don't.
No.
We want more. We don't even accept comedies and I'm speaking mainly about people who enjoy film on the level that we do. And I wouldn't say I'm not trying to be elitist, but the difference between the general public consuming, and we would do the same thing with music, television, and or literature. Like, we would not accept this as
this movie wouldn't be made now.
No, it wouldn't be made. And even something like The Hangover, we would not really fly very well.
We would probably want more. We would want more from it.
Right. We want more. And thank God for Judd Apatow, because he's mainly the reason I think we want more from our comedies, like people like him.
Yeah.
And the crop of incredible writers that have come along and said, we don't need to write stupid comedies. We can write comedies that have soul and arc and story.
Now, to be fair, I am a huge fan of stupid comedies from the 80s. Give me Police Academy. That is funny, and it is a certain type of humor. This film, I just don't know where to classify.
But you have to admit that even Police Academy at this point, it doesn't age well. It's not funny unless you're 10.
Oh.
I haven't watched it probably since I was 20. So
no, I think it's stupid in that way, but I think its intended purpose is still what it was.
Right, but even something like Caddyshack, something like Caddyshack is still funny, but there's more going on there at a level that, like,
because there is a timeless.
The Breakfast, and some of the John Hughes films don't age well, and others age really well.
Others are brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, friends, we got to move on.
I'm a no on watching this again.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I don't think you need to watch it.
I mean, I guess it is a time period piece, but we should leave it in the 90s.
Do you know what? Go watch Notting Hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go watch Notting Hill. All right, time for Game of the Week.
Yeah.
You want to answer?
Nope. Every week.
Every week is a game, whether or not Jim is going to guess the button correctly or not.
Yes.
All right, here we go. Game of the week. We're playing Recast It this week. So we're going to recast the characters of Viv, Edward, any other character in the movie, and then a little bonus this week. Who would record a modern cover of Pretty Woman? Which I should add, I love Roy Orbison music. Absolutely love Roy Orbison music. Who would cover Pretty Woman? Do you guys want me to go first, or do you guys want to go?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Now, I have been heavily influenced by two different things I've been watching frequently when I did this recasting. One is I saw Knives Out, and I would love Chris Evans in the Richard Gere role, and Anna de Armas from Knives Out. They're in a lot of scenes together as the Julia Roberts role. She played a somewhat similar role in Blade Runner 2049. Yeah. And she's great. I mean, she's somebody I think in the next 5-6 years she's going to be the next Bond girl. She's going to be in tons of stuff. Amazing. As Phil, the slimy lawyer, Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've been rewatching Always Sunny on Hulu, and he's just, I mean, he is the best. He's also great in AP Bio with
he's disgusting.
Patton. Yeah.
He's perfectly
like
disgusting.
Sleazy.
Yeah.
Oh, he'd be the perfect. And then for my cover of Pretty Woman, the Avett brothers, who I absolutely
very nice.
love.
They're fabulous.
Who are playing the Omagong. I never say that right.
Omegang?
Omegang, sorry. Brewery this summer for two shows.
Oh, I would
you
go
can
to that.
get a tent, sleep on the brewery site, and watch them perform.
You're
if
so
anybody
very
would like
white.
to go.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know.
Really?
All right, Jim, tell us.
Oh, it's my turn. So I had Chris Evans as well.
No
But
way.
yeah, I did. And I was just thinking of like 40 somethings that could play like, you know, a more, I didn't want to, I mean, typically we would go with like the, you know, flip it on its head because it's so, that's what they seem to be doing.
I thought about that too. Yeah. But it was...
So I'll say Robert Downey Jr. Why don't we go with him instead of Chris Evans?
Oh, that's a good choice. I thought of him too. That's
Basically
a good
Tony
choice.
Stark is what they're going for here.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of like, I was trying to make this a little awkward, right? Because of the age gap, I think. And I went with Emma Watson as the Julia Roberts character.
All right.
And as Hector Elizondo's character, I thought we would keep it a Latino and go with John Leguizamo.
Ooh, I like that.
And I have...
Who will be in one of our movies this month.
Mm-hmm.
Katie's Choice, Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
Love him.
And then the cover of Pretty Woman, I was thinking more of like what Hollywood would do to try to cover as much ground as they could.
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran.
Nah.
Pretty
Who was
Woman.
great in Yesterday. Did you guys see Yesterday yet?
Did not. Have not.
It's fun. You should see. That would be a good movie for us to do. That was a fun movie, and Ed Sheeran was awesome in that movie.
I would really like to see that. So I had a really hard time with Recast It because I don't think that there should be another version of this movie.
Well,
And
we're
so-
not judging if they should.
The
We're just
only
saying-
way that I felt okay about doing it was if we put it in the retirement home where James Garner and Gina Rollins live in the Notebook.
Yes, we're crossing it over.
We're
a
crossing it
shared
over.
Universe.
This is good. I like this.
All right,
love
so Gina
Love
Rollins lives in the retirement home with her friends Meryl Streep and Dame Judi Dench. Then James Garner's still the husband, but Richard Gere is the very skilled in certain pleasures younger member of the retirement community
Okay.
who needs to pay his rent in a kind of a way.
Okay.
And the ladies who've got their good
Loving
pensions
this.
have
This is
no
actually a pretty good movie.
problem.
This
We
is
give
like
it
the
no-
sexy cocoon. I think this
Yeah.
could work.
Yep.
We have just turned this from a game of Recast It to Just Pitch It, one of our other games.
I'm telling you,
Richard
this will be
Grieco
great.
be an orderly. In this
Absolutely.
film?
Well,
Couldn't
so
No,
get Richard
I
I
Grieco.
would
did
love to
have-
see all these older white people doing like terrible things. And the orderly has to be Craig Robinson, just giving like straight man commentary
Oh, that's
to the whole
interesting.
situation.
I was putting Jeff Goldblum in the film as sort of like the
yes.
the straight
very
man,
interesting.
the friend, if
Yeah.
you will,
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Oh, I love that.
and then
Cool cover, of course.
my cover is of Pretty Woman is going to be done by Brandy Carlisle.
I think that is my second choice.
She'd do a great job
Brilliant.
with it.
She's brilliant. Okay, that is our game of the week. Time for 5 questions.
You want answers? You want answers? I want the truth! What makes a man, Mr. Lebowski?
What the fuck is the internet? Words.
All right, here we go. Jim is answering 5 questions this week. First up, thumbs up or thumbs down, Roy Orbison music.
Thumbs up.
Yes,
Traveling
I love
Wilburys, a little.
Oh yeah, there's a little bit of
yeah.
everything in there.
Yeah.
I love the what was the black and white special they did on PBS. Every time PBS tries to sell a membership to their thing, they re-air the special and ask you to buy it. All right, question 2 here. Who's a better redheaded actress, Julia Roberts or Amy Adams?
Ooh, this is tough. I would say that I think Amy Adams might be a better actress, but I think Julia Roberts is a bigger star.
Agreed.
I don't know.
I think you're spot on with that. She's a bigger. Julia Roberts is a great actress, bigger celebrity.
Yeah,
I love Amy Adams though. She's one of my favorite actors.
I just think she's a good actress. What do you think, Katie?
I'm surprised that you would not go with Julia Roberts because I thought she was like.
I do love her.
If we had, like exceptions in our marriage, I thought like she was.
Oh,
one
really?
Of them.
That would be your exception.
I don't know.
I mean, that was like an early on. I don't know whether things have changed for you, but
no, I do love her. Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. Amy Adams is a wonderful actress.
Yeah, like I don't think of Julia Roberts as like an
Julia
actress.
Roberts.
Like a hardcore like is going to
character actress. You don't see her as a supporting role.
I see her as
she's got to be the
Aaron
star
Brockovich.
in something.
Aaron Brockovich is basically this character grown up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Steel Magnolias.
She's
that was the film she was in right before Pretty Woman, by the way. Steel Magnolias.
She dies.
Okay, fill in the blank question number 3 here. What's the best hotel you ever stayed in?
Ooh, this is tough. I think for me, the best hotel I ever stayed in is the Hard Rock in San Diego.
Oh, that was a fun one.
Really?
I think it's
that was a fun hotel.
I think it's the nicest hotel and coolest I've ever stayed in. Yep.
I have shared this before. I was lucky enough to stay in the Ritz-Carlton in the Virgin Islands when I went for a wedding.
Do you have any of the golden coins for the champagne machine?
No, but it was pretty amazing. We stayed in the presidential suite offshoot, as we've talked about before on this episode, on this show. All right, question 4, Jason Alexander, someone who we did not talk about, but did provide a good performance in this film. But it led me to think of this question. Jim, who's your favorite Seinfeld character?
I think it is George. And I think it's because of the amount of like anxiety induced poor choices that he makes and then just kind of like snowballs them into other crazy choices. Whereas like Kramer's just making crazy choices because he's crazy. George is there's always like a clear reason for why George is doing what he's doing, and you can see it from like 20 miles away, but it just keeps happening.
Yes. Excellent. Okay. Katie, do you have a favorite Seinfeld character?
Ooh. I think I would agree with that. I think like George is the reason you watch, right? Like I feel like his neuroses is like,
well, he is Larry David.
He's supposed to be the Larry David character.
Yeah, he's supposed to be Larry David. Yeah. Okay, great. Finally, our deep thoughts question of the week: should prostitution be legal in America?
I don't know why this is a deep thoughts question.
It is a deep
because
thought.
people legitimately are arguing for this on trying to get this passed.
I don't know. I don't know enough about the statistics, and I don't know. I mean,
I'm just going to say no. Maybe that makes me a square. I don't care what people say. I don't believe that women are freely making the choice, are in a like if they could have everything in their life and be given all the opportunities possible, that they would choose to have sex for money. I'm sorry. Maybe, and people can come at me about that. I think the same thing with pornography and the same thing with stripping and stuff like that. And maybe that makes me seem weird. I just don't think that if somebody had an equal opportunity and access to resources and things like that, they would make that choice.
Yep.
That was my heavy
deep thoughts.
You thought about it deeply.
Deep thoughts.
I did not.
Well, people talk about that. You know, when you teach history class, you have like those questions like, should gun control happen? Should these things? And people always talk about that. Should all drugs be legalized type thing? That's one of the, in Nevada, obviously it's legal.
Right.
Yeah.
My argument is it's not, prostitution is not Julia Roberts in this movie Prostitution.
No.
That is not. If you want to see what the life of a prostitute really is in a film, go watch that one with Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue. with leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Then you will begin to see what the life of a prostitute really is. In a more upbeat way, next week, we are going to be watching my favorite movie of 2019, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I'm really excited because Katie and Jim have not seen it yet.
No, we have not.
You know, so, and I thought that I am not a Quentin Tarantino fanboy. I love Pulp Fiction. As we know, Jim really loved Pulp Fiction. Last year was his favorite film that we did. This movie is all sorts of good.
Can't wait.
In all sorts of ways. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff that we always do. You can find us everywhere.
Leave us a review. We would love to hear from you.
I mean, you can tell us that we're assholes. You can tell us we are wrong.
If you want to tell Brian he's wrong specifically, that would be funny.
Commenters, if Pretty Woman is your favorite movie, we still love you. And we still, respect your opinion.
If you think my commentary was too woke a few minutes ago, feel free to comment about that.
Or too asleep.
I don't think anybody's going to say that.
Feel free. My goal in 2020 is just to get enough people to review this show that studios start sending us Oscar screeners. So I don't have to pay to go to the movies anymore.
I mean, listen, put it on your vision board.
Is that something that can happen?
Speak your truth. Speak your truth.
If a prostitute can get the richest man in America,
have a dream
to bring them home, then we could get Oscar screeners here.
There you go.
All right.
All right. That's it.
If Hector Elizondo can teach you to count your orctines, then we can go to the Oscars. I should add that
Aileen is still trying to teach me how to set the table properly, and we've been together forever.
Start from the outside and make your way.
No, but that's different as setting.
I don't know which side the napkin is. Where's the knife? I don't get that. I know. She tells me every dinner. All right, we'll see everybody next week for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.